Well, folks, welcome to another episode of the Ripple Intent podcast, usually hosted by John Grant and Kyle McCrowski, which is spelled just like it's pronounced. And I'm Val Williams, and for some reason they've let me do the introduction to this, but we're just here to chat about whatever's on our mind and talk about the power of people in the workplace, which is honestly what I care about more than anything. You can teach anyone to do the work, but can you teach them to care? That's a different conversation. And so Kyle and John have taught me that the way I see the world is actually pretty normal and well supported. So I don't know. You guys, it's your show, guys. I mean, you do what you want here. You handed me the microphone.
That was great.
You've made a terrible mistake. That's on you.
That was perfect.
That was perfect. Wait, the way you see the world is normal?
Right, where did that come from?
I know.
Now you're making shit up, Val. I don't like. I was with you until that point.
Yeah, the way I see the world is normal.
Oh my Lord! So, folks who are listening to this are in for quite a treat. If you don't know, well, if you know Val, and if you don't know Val,
if you don't know Val, you've made a lot of good decisions in your life. That's what happens.
Well, thanks for coming back. It's a blast to have you here. Always, it was the first time, and I mean, we've done so much together. You've been a huge supporter of Ripple Intent for years, and it's you know, I love facilitating with you. It's always a great time at the breakfast clubs and bouncing ideas and talking things through and just catching up. So I'm glad you're here. Thanks for taking the time today and joining us.
Well, thank you. I say the way I see the world is normal, and let's face it, it's not. But at the same time, I think what I liked about working with you guys on the Ripple Intent events and the symposiums and whatnot, it's been, I don't fit in, but I belong. And I know that's a big conversation that we have sometimes in the world. And I am a little bit of an odd kid. And I've always been an odd kid. And now I'm an odd adult, or an odd middle-aged. I'm an odd Karen. I used to have the haircut even. It was great. It was like a possum on my head. It was, but yeah, with the John and Kate +8. But yeah, like basically I like the fact that when I've worked with our group for Ripple Intent, you can hear people disagree without disagreeing. I watched conflict happen where it's not conflicted. Like people could disagree or argue a point or decide, you know, hey, I don't like this. Like I love being part of that group and hearing people disagree without being disagreeable. And at the same time, my particular flavor of wackadoo is just really accepted in a way. And it's like, there's room for Val at the table where we'll sit through the ridiculous cultural references to eventually get to something meaningful or thoughtful. And I'm like, thank you. Thank you for giving me a space at the table. I belong. I don't have to fit in because I belong. And I guess that's where I've been. I think I might have froze up on you guys. Oh, sorry. All right. Sorry. Are you there? Hello. Oh, shoot. Oh, sorry, guys. Didn't mean to lose you there. I live in Denver, and yet I have an unstable internet connection. Like, your connection is unstable. I'm like, same, bro, same. I feel that. But yeah, no, I like, what I like about Ripple Intent is that I don't have to fit in because I belong. And that is something that I've struggled with in my life and in my career. And in the fact that, like I was sort of saying in that wandering preamble I gave to this episode, the way I see the world is that I can teach. Skills are fine. I can teach you skills. I can teach you how to do a code study. I can teach you how to program a hospital. I cannot teach you to care. And that's a whole conversation that I've appreciated about Ripple Intent and about the work we're all doing together, is that those emotional conversations of, no matter how a project is put together, all the tools in the world can be great, but if the people are not that great, or the people are always fighting each other, you're not going to get anywhere. Like, all the contracts and tools and agreements and things is only going to get you so far. At some point, the people make the difference. And that to me has been, it's validating. I'll put it that way. It's validating. And so you guys are going to have to cut me off. You know this, right? You're going to have to cut me off.
No, I'm just going to wait till you're done, and then we'll say, thanks everyone for listening.
Exactly.
Like I said, her meds kicked in. All right, she's out. Good. Here we go. All right. Well, thanks, folks. But no, it's like that's one of the things I've appreciated about being with Ripple Intent is I worked at a construction company for 2 years, and it turns out that was not where I belonged. I was not good at being a contractor, but I learned a lot about. I had joined a construction company because I got sick of architecture, and it turns out I wasn't mad at architecture. I was mad at the way I'd been practicing architecture, and going to the construction company and watching how other architects work, I was like, oh, that's really cool. I can be that kind of professional. I can be that kind of person. And then I started working with the Ripple Intent group, which is through that construction company is how I met Ripple Intent. I was like, oh, wow. There are people who care about people in the workplace. And we're having that conversation, and we're acknowledging the fact that, because that had always been my struggle, is that so much of my career had been about the processes and get it done and get it done and get it done. And it was never about, hey, everybody who comes to work brings their failed marriages and bad childhoods and everything to work. And they bring their mental illness to work, and they bring their sadness and their pain and their imposter syndrome to work. And if we don't deal with that and acknowledge it, the work only goes so far. You're still going to be struggling, regardless of whether you're an architect or a contractor or a banker or a server in a breakfast place or whatever. It's like all of that matters. So to me,
but weren't you brought up to leave that stuff at the door?
Exactly.
Work is work.
Work is work, and you don't get to talk about work. So you don't get to talk about your life outside of work, only to say, oh, well, I have, 2 kids and a dog or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, was being professional. You don't bring all that quote unquote drama. And that's not, of course, what it is, but that's how it was contextualized to us, was that there's no place for that here. Just like politics, just like personal problems, just like religion. Mm-hmm. You don't talk about that stuff at work.
Right. And what's weird, though, is that there's no way to get rid of it. Like, you may not be allowed to talk about it, but it's almost like it's worse if you can't talk about it. If you can't pull somebody aside and go, I'm freaking out, or I was working at this one firm, and my boss got a divorce while he was having to come to work every day, do his job while getting divorced. And I'm like, that is exhausting. How did he do it? And I had the same thing. I'm like, if I'm living with some sort of emotional issue or something, or my family's falling apart, or I'm falling apart, how do I bring that to work? I can't talk about it, but I can't not talk about it at some point, because at some point it's going to happen. It's going to affect what you're doing. So to me, I was definitely taught that you need to put that aside. And but I began to see how much that outside affected inside, how much of your life outside of this office affects what happens in this office. And I've even had bosses where the meeting will go as well as his day is going. And that's the other side of it, is that if our ability to get work done is based on the capricious whims of what kind of a day my boss is having, that's a really tough way for me to get work done and things done. And so, like, we need to talk about how what happens outside of work affects what happens in work, because also I'm spending a lot of time with these people. In a way, we spend more time with our coworkers than we do with our families, as it's been observed by smarter people than me. And it's like, if I'm not getting along with these people, or I'm bringing something toxic or painful or whatever to work, how do I engage with these people when I can't talk about the thing that's bothering me? And what if the thing that's bothering me is the person that I'm working with? So yeah, it's what I appreciate about, like, I think about, I've been working in architecture for 24 years, and I'm finding it really feels like work is changing. And some of that was the pandemic, some of that's whatever, but work is changing. I mean, the fact that we're having these conversations about, like, Ripple Intent, and we're having these conversations in the workplace, and we're talking about feelings in the workplace, and we're talking about, diversity and inclusion and equity and things like that. We're having these conversations in the workplace. This would not have happened 20 years ago when I first moved to Denver and began my architectural career. the fact that we're having this, the fact that even the ripple intent movement, as it were, has spread to other cities, and we're having these symposiums in other cities, and we have breakfast clubs in other cities. There's a whole conversation there that we didn't used to have. And I don't know if we could have had this 20 years ago, but we needed it. And, it's only too late if you don't start now. So, I mean, how did you guys get into this? If you're getting into this, it feels like the same thing. You were taught to put this aside, and now you come to work. I mean, what does it change for you? Because for me, it allows my coworkers to be themselves. Do you feel like people are more authentic around you because they know that you can do this, or you can have this conversation? You know what I mean?
I'm going to turn that question. Who's the interviewer here, Val? Sorry. Guests aren't allowed to ask questions. We open the door and let you do the intro, and now you think you can ask questions. Well, so I'm curious, though, to the point, because some of this is about, like, how do people know that they could have a different conversation with you? How do people show up with you? Is it clear for other people that they can have a conversation with you that's more than about the task at hand?
I hope they do. I try to do that by starting it. And it's the conversation around vulnerability. Like, first of all, that's not a word you're supposed to say ever, especially in the workplace. But at the same time, it's like, be vulnerable. Well, you first, So I go first. I go, hey, I had this thing, or like one of the things I talk about sometimes with coworkers. I just started a new position recently as a healthcare practice leader at Bet Group. And I've been there about 2 months now. And it's been a really validating, refreshing, rewarding situation and role for me to be in. And part of it is working with people and being the one to be, the oddball first. I get to, make a joke and people go, oh, haha, she's comfortable making jokes. And then also I talk about even my struggles with mental health and how much work has to do with that. But some of it's also just your life has to do with that. And so being willing to say, yeah, I've had moments where I couldn't get out of bed, or I've had moments where I pulled away from my coworkers at a job because I didn't feel like it was okay to be me. I didn't belong. I did not belong, and I did not fit in. And I got very uncomfortable in those spaces. So part of it is for me to be the vulnerable person first, and to at least speak about vulnerable topics and to share some of myself. No one's going to share until you share. You have to model the behavior you want. And that's kind of where I'm at. I'm trying to model the behavior I want to see in other people. So if I want people to be honest with me, I have to be honest with them. And I have to say, hey, I really like what you did in there. Hey, I think you could have said this a lot differently, or I said this better. Whatever. Like, having those conversations, it takes a lot. And to some extent, there's a certain amount of being okay with yourself that I struggle with as well. It's taken me a long time to be okay with myself, and some of that is work, and some of that's not work. It's life. But yeah, I'm hoping that people, because I've had people say that to me, to say, I felt comfortable being myself because you were yourself at work. And I was like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And so, and I had a coworker who's deaf, and he was very much to himself. And then when I showed up at my last firm, he was like, I felt more comfortable being myself because you were yourself. And I felt like it was okay to be different finally. And in that way, he really began to bloom and become not just, he was already a good person, but like he was beginning to show more of his skills as an architect because he got to be himself and be fully himself. And so it was just really cool to have people say that to me, to go, I feel more comfortable being myself because you're yourself. And I mean, somebody has to start. So that's me. I'm the starter. And to be fair, one of my strengths is in Clifton Strengths is activator. I just want to get started. And so I have to start. So yeah, I hope that I do model that for people. I feel like I do. But you're also asking me to assess my own behavior, and I'm not always the best I'm not always the best judge of how well I'm doing, because John has given me some emotional boosts at time, and some pep talks for my career that I needed, because I was like, oh, I'm fine. He's like, no, you're more than fine. You're great. You're really awesome. And I was like, oh, thanks, man. So yeah, that's.
Oh, so it's your fault. That's what she's saying.
John started this.
You did this.
Like, John, you had the chance to put this genie back in the bottle.
I could have shut this down a long time ago.
I could have employed the workplace beatdown.
I know. Some sort of emotional chloroform, like, to just bring this down. But no, you dare to boost my ego even more than it is. And it's like, now I'm really insufferable. So yeah, now you're stuck with this. But
so you're doing it by example, is what you're saying.
Point,
I mean, but at the same time, if you go back, would you tell yourself 20 years ago to do what you just described?
It'd be hard to do, because it was a different time, and not even a different time, but yeah, it was a different time when, like, 20 years ago, I had a boss that would physically threaten me in architecture, and it was really, really creepy. There was a different time in terms of what we tolerate now in the workplace and in the public sphere. So in a way, if I had to go back in a time machine and look at myself in 2003 or 2004, I'd be like, hang in there. It gets better. First of all, hang on in there. It gets better. And also, you need to keep working out and stop eating so many salads, but you need to keep working out, because once you stop, it's going to be hard to get started again. You're going to be all old and your shoulder hurts and blah, blah, blah. But also, yeah, hang in there. It's going to get better. The world is going to catch up with how you see the world. That sounds like a weird thing to say, but yeah, it's like, I see the world as humanistic. My biggest strength, my strongest strength, as it were, is individualization in Clifton Strengths. And I see everybody as this human and this person needs to be worked with in a certain way. And on the one hand, as a manager or a team leader, that can be a little bit exhausting, because you can't just give a blanket statement and then run away. You have to deal with each person in the way that helps them the best. But that's also where I've been told that my management style and my leadership style is very beneficial, because it brings out the best in each person, because they feel seen and heard. And that's kind of all I've ever wanted in life, is to be seen and heard. And so now I can't shut up, right? But it's that ability to be seen for who and what I am, and to be acknowledged. Like, if someone's not really outgoing, great, don't be outgoing. Be more of an introvert and do what you do best, and let's find the right role for you, and the right place for you, and the right tasks for you, and whatever else. And let's find the right way to reward you. I mean, like, we've all had conversations about the person who does not want to be singled out and acknowledged, even with praise, in a meeting. They want to be complimented on the side, but not in front of everybody. It makes them uncomfortable. Knowing that about people, and propping them up and giving them what they need, is how you get the best out of any human being. And that everybody's unique. You're unique just like everybody else. You know what I mean? So I think that's where it is. I've tried to live that. I've tried to live that individualization and seeing people for who and what they are, because I've always wanted to be seen for who and what I am. And in a way, getting more comfortable with who and what I am has made it easier for me to give that to other people, as opposed to, like, a lot of my advice and leadership style earlier in my career. Oh, I think you might have lost me for a second. Sorry. Oh, fudge. All right. It's trying to reconnect. Okay. I don't know if I'm back. Sorry about that.
Hello.
Again, in the middle of a city, I'm 2 blocks from the governor's mansion, and I'm losing internet. Yay. Hooray for modern life. But yeah.
So let me go back. So where you were going, so you had some pretty profound stuff in what you said, and you might argue that, but where I'm going, and part of this, because I think this is where a lot of people really struggle, and I appreciate you sharing what you're sharing, because what they struggle with is, so there's two components to what you described. There's the authenticity piece, which is, be yourself. And then what I also heard you say, though, was you bring with your individualization a certain amount of time tested and learned situational awareness. There are times to do certain things and to, I don't want to say be more authentic, but there's times to be yourself more, and there's times to, I want to say, quiet it down, but it's not what the group needs right now, or it's not what that other person needs right now. Is that what I heard?
Kind of, yeah. And that is one of the more difficult things I'd say to do, because so much of, there was a time in my life that I'm slowly getting over, as it were, where there was so much emphasis in my career and in my life on, Val, you're so funny, you're so outgoing, you're so entertaining. And so it got to the point where all I did was entertain. And it got really hard to engage with people because I was always on. And being on is, and having that facade, as it were, it's like, are people actually getting to know you, Val? Because you're just funny Val, loud Val, whatever Val. And it's like, are you allowed? Can you allow yourself to be seen as less than amped, less than awesome, less than perfect, less than what everyone's used to? Because I've been invited to parties at times where I find out, I get to the party and I find out that I'm supposed to be the party. I'm supposed to be the entertainment. And that's really, I'm like, I was just going to hang out and chat with people and enjoy myself. But you want me to basically be the ringmaster of the poop show here? Like, is that what you're looking for? It's really a weird place to be. So some of it is for me to go, Val, you don't have to be on. Val, you don't have to be in charge of this meeting or in charge of this conversation or in charge of, it's not your job to bring the room up. Your job is to be you. And if you right now is kind of chill, focus on getting work done, great. If you right now are a bunch of non sequiturs and singing parodies of pop songs about your cats, fine, like, do that. But like, you get to be you. You don't have to be on. So there is a certain amount of, when I am myself, it allows other people to be themselves. And sometimes to be myself is to just chill, just exist. You don't just vibe. Just vibe with the room and vibe with the group and don't take the lead. And it's okay. So yeah, there's a certain blend of, you got to know when to hold them and know when to fold them with who you are. But ultimately, even when I'm chill, I'm still being myself. And that authenticity has taken me a long time to be with and to soak into. And I'm still not great at it all the time. I still will get super amped or something, or back off when someone actually does need me to step up and be myself, but be myself or be more vocal. But yeah, there's a certain amount of knowing when to hold them and knowing when to fold them. And ultimately, even when I am not hilarious on Val, that still gives people the permission to not be on themselves and to be themselves and to come in and be like, I'm in a crappy mood today. Fair enough. Just do your thing and roll, bro. It's fine. So I don't know if that's where you were going, Kyle, but yeah, it's a combination. It's knowing what the room needs, as it were. And the room doesn't always need me to be on, which is helpful for me as well.
I love your references are almost all older than you. So well done on the Kenny Rogers. And I didn't know that cat pop songs were an option.
Yeah.
So maybe that needs to be the next podcast episode. But I'm
we
making
need a breakfast
notes.
club that's just parodies of pop songs. Like, parodies of. Well, we had the fun of being like the company I'm with now, Bet Group. We have an event we do once a month called Sketchy Hour, where somebody puts up 5 unrelated words and you have 20 minutes to make a sketch that incorporates those 5 things. And it is like, it's drawing improv. It's like Pictionary win, lose, or draw type thing, but it's hilarious because then everybody who draws gets to then get up and explain their sketch and go, well, here's what I was trying to do. So like the last sketch we had was Centaur, spiderweb, 2x4s. It was the most ridiculous, like random assembly of words. And we came up with, it was just an hour of us just laughing constantly and going like, and you're not laughing at anybody's drawing skills. It was more about, we found a safe space to have a good laugh together and to share how we process, you get to see how everybody processes the words. Because like I drew a centaur who had broken her pinky finger and she needed help carrying 2x4s. And then somebody else drew, it was spiderweb and centaur. And this one guy drew Spider-Man as a centaur. And it was just an hour of laughing and feeling spontaneous. And in that moment, we all got to show up with our good or bad sketching, cartooning skills and our over literal way of reading things or super, loosey-goosey way of reading things and just being together. And it was like that moment where I felt, I'd only been with the company for about a month at that time, but it felt like that's where I felt like I belonged. What I drew maybe didn't fit in, but I belonged and we all belonged there and it felt good. And so that's another place where it's like, I'm going to be as weird as I am and you get to be as weird as you are and we all get to be oddballs together. But yeah, it's like there's a certain authenticity to, and being authentic is, well, someone once said, it's easier to love yourself. Like there's always this push for, you can't love anyone. No one's going to love you until you love yourself. And it's like, but it's easier to love myself for who and what I am when other people also love me for who and what I am. It's tough to give yourself acceptance when no one else accepts you. And so in a way, finding part of my career and my life has just been finding places that I belong and finding people that accept me for whatever kind of wackadoo person I am and whatever weird things I have. And if I just suddenly spontaneously start singing a pop song about my cat, that's what I'm going to do, or whatever, or turn something into, turn some sort of like Frank Sinatra song into a song about how slow my laptop is or something. You know what I mean? It's like, you just got to do that. And sometimes it happens. And so having people who appreciate you for who and what you are makes it easier to self-accept. I don't know. I see you nodding a little bit, Kyle, and I don't know if you're agreeing or just falling asleep because I get both, but like, that's, you know what I mean? It's like, it's having, I mean, that's where I'm at. It's like, how do I accept myself for who and what I am if nobody else does? And at some point we do have to acknowledge that human beings do rely to some extent on external feedback to know if we're decent or not, or good or not,
Yeah, no, I'm nodding because I'm going back to the question I asked before about if you go backwards, there's a time where this resonates and it makes sense, and there's a wisdom to that, and I think that's what a lot of people, especially early in their career, are looking for, is help me understand how to do this stuff. When I'm talking about the people stuff, and what you're describing is there's a balance between knowing yourself, being authentic, figuring out what your strengths are, and understanding how they come across and how other people experience you. And then of course, getting that feedback that you're doing it well or you're not doing it well. When a team member or a colleague or a friend can say, hey, you're doing this over the top, and I don't think now is the time. And to get that feedback and go, oh, yeah, it doesn't mean you have to fundamentally change who you are. It's that who you are in that capacity isn't the right timing for the situation.
Exactly.
And I think some people feel that feedback is very much you're wrong, or you should change, or you need to fundamentally do something different in the way you approach your work. It can be very difficult or very heavy if you don't have that basis of where you're coming from.
Right. Yeah, I think for me, it has definitely been part of my career is not just skills. It's not just the skills of doing the job. So my primary role in my job is I'm a healthcare architect, and I'm specifically a medical planner. So I design the insides of the healthcare facilities. And a big thing that I do is understanding how you're flowing from soil to clean, or clean to soiled, or how you take a patient from the front door to prep to surgery to recovery to out. And there's a lot of knowledge in that at the same time. So part of it is the skill itself, but also it's how do I engage with people, and watching other people, being in meetings with other bosses and watching them succeed or fail with nurses and doctors and staff, and watching them do their job. But it's, so part of it is knowing the skills, but part of it's also knowing how does the way I work, how does who I am as a person and what I am as a person, how does that also work with the kind of job I'm doing? And to some extent, my personality works anywhere, in regardless of what phase of the project it is. But my personality also works really well, and my strengths work well in the beginning parts of a project. So I'm talking to nurses and talking to doctors, and I'm trying to figure out what is it you really need. It's how do you work and how do you want to work? And so a lot of my struggle has been the authenticity of going, hey, Val, yes, you don't have to change who and what you are, but understand that this meeting and this conversation, we needed you to do this and you were doing this. And so it's not throwing the whole person out, basically. It's a lot of that. And part of that's just watching how meetings run and watching how other people do their job and going, okay, this person was really uncomfortable with how the floor plan looked, but they were just my boss was just trying to rush through the process and get it done because we still have 4 more meetings to go. And he wasn't picking up on the fact that the CNO was really uncomfortable with how this nurse station looked or whatever. But yeah, so it is about being able to take the criticism, not even personally or professionally, but going, that was an error in that moment versus there's something wrong with me and I'm not allowed to be funny. It's like, no, you can be funny. Just that wasn't the moment, as it were.
You're separating the behavior from the person.
Right.
The person is not the sum of the behaviors necessarily, right? But understanding the situation, what's appropriate in the situation while accepting the whole.
Right. It was in that moment. And so, yeah, so part of it is being able to separate that, because it is easy sometimes to hear I did something wrong to I am wrong. You know what I mean? The ultimate version of that. I did something bad versus I am bad. And it's easy to overgeneralize. And some of that is just taking care of yourself, living life, having good friends around you, getting therapy. I mean, let's be honest, there's a lot going on there. But yeah, it takes time. And I think that is the hardest part, I think, of my entire journey, is that it just took time. And it takes what it takes. Like, people love to say it is what it is. Like, well, it takes what it takes, And at some point, the only way to have 24 years of experience in a field is to spend 24 years doing it. And I've realized that's where I'm at. I've spent 24 years doing this job and living this life and living in Denver. I lived literally half my life in Denver. I'm originally from Georgia, and I got out of there as fast as I could. And now I'm here, and in a land of reading and no humidity. It's awesome. But like, it's also, it takes what it takes. It takes time. And like, I would listen to my boss go like, well, that's blah, 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 blah. And I was like, how does he know that? And I'm like, oh, because he's been doing this for so long. Same thing for me. Now I can go, yeah, blah, 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 blah. I can do that for so long. Or I can do something in an hour, and someone goes, you do that in an hour? I'm like, no, it took me 24 years to do that in an hour. You know what I mean? And that's where I'm at. Time is it takes what it takes, and it takes time, and it takes, the only way out is through, I guess, is the best way to put it. So I am not always a patient person. I'm patient for the wrong things. Am I patient, or am I just tolerating nonsense? That's always a question I have to ask myself. Do I tolerate? Like, you get what you tolerate. So that's where I'm at. But yeah, it's like, I've realized I've spent 24 years doing this job, and there are things I know now that if I could go back in the time machine to myself 20 years ago and go, first of all, hang in there. It is going to get better. You are going to, at some point, you will have done this for 24 years and not 4 years, and you will know different things. And some of this will make more sense. Some of this will still not make any dadgum sense. Fair enough. You know what I mean? Like, that's where you're at. So it's if you're going back to the time machine conversation, which is going to get weird, but it's like, listen, it's going to get really weird in a minute, but hang in there. But yeah, it's like, I just realizing that it takes what it takes. And that's my favorite phrase. It takes what it takes. 9 women can't make a baby in a month. It takes what it takes. It takes one person 9 months to make one baby, at least one baby, you know, unless you're like multitasking and you got twins or something like that, whatever.
Whoa.
But
now we're starting the next podcast. So we'll talk about pregnancy and reproduction.
This is a very different birds and bees conversation. Yeah. But no, it's like, that's where I'm at. It's like, it takes what it takes. And sometimes time is the only thing that really helps you do it, because life is lived forward and understood backwards, you know? Kind of a thing.
That's an awesome place to end. I really like that quote. That really is good. Is that yours, or did you steal
I think
that?
it's like Nietzsche or somebody like that. I don't know. Somebody smarter than me. Nietzsche or Dr. Seuss, or I don't know. Somebody like that. Pee Wee Herman. I don't know.
I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I'll tell you about this is cool, and as always, a lot of fun. Thank you for your insights. Appreciate the guidance, the wisdom that you shared. There's a lot to unpack here, and there's a lot to think about. So I hope everybody enjoyed it. And as always, check us out at ripplintent.org. We got other podcasts. Find a breakfast club near you, and if there isn't one near you, reach out to us, and we'll help you get one started. Until then, hope you're all well, and we will see you on the next podcast. Take care.
And this is your fault.
I will accept that. Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for having me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Val. It's always a pleasure.